In this video, I want to talk about the impact of fiscal policies and our public spending on stock market fluctuation. The impact of fiscal policies and public spending on stock market fluctuation. Actually, when the government spends and when they uh, promulgate policies, you discover that this pattern of spending and policies will certainly affect the behavior of stocks in the markets. So I want to look at this particular topic under few items. Number one is impact of fiscal policies on stock market performance. When it comes to how the market responds to fiscal policies, we need to highlight the issue of government spending. When it comes to government spending, you discover that government spending, is a key aspect of fiscal policy. And not only that, it can stimulate economic growth by increasing demand for goods and services. When the government allocates funds to infrastructure projects like defense, healthcare, and other sectors, it can lead to increase business activities and corporate earning, positively impacting the stock markets. For example, stimulus packages or infrastructure spending can boost stocks in construction, material, and related sector. So as the government spends money, there is more money in circulation. And with this increased money in circulation, you discover that consumers are able to spend, and as they spend money, corporate profit tends to increase, and that will certainly impact the stock market positively. We also want to consider tax policies. When it comes to tax policies, fiscal policies that involve tax cuts can enhance consumer spending and corporate profitability. We discover that lower corporate taxes can lead to higher after-tax earnings, which may encourage investment and increase stock prices. Likewise, individual tax cuts can boost consumer spending, and by so doing, it will drive demands for goods and services. You discover that the more people spend, the more companies tend to perform very well when it comes to earning. So these will then benefit businesses and as well as influence stock prices. Conversely, tax hike may result in a kind of reduction in disposable income, lower corporate profits, and potential drag down. It has the potential to drag down stock market performance. So these factors go hand in hand. The more government spends, the more the market tends to do very well. We look at number two, government spending as economic stimulus. Government spending, as a form of economic stimulus. We want to look at this particular subheading, counter-cyclical spending. Counter-cyclical spending. During recessions or period of economic slowdown, you discover that governments often increase spending to stimulate the economy. And these can include direct financial assistance, unemployment benefits, and public works projects. So increased government spending can support economic growth. It can equally lift investor sentiments and as well as drive momentum in stock prices. We want to equally look at sector-specific benefits. sector specific benefits. In this regards, government spending often targets a specific sector. It might be healthcare, it could be the technology sector, it might include defense or energy. All right. So, for example, a government investment in renewable energy infrastructure could lead to growth in green technology and energy stocks, which while defense spending or military spending could benefit defense contractors whenever there is war and the government increase spending on defense. Discover that companies in the defense sector, defense contractors will tend to do very well. So stocks in these sectors may outperform during periods of increased government spending. We look at number 3, monetary versus fiscal policy. Monetary versus fiscal policy. We want to look precisely, what exactly is monetary policy and what, exactly is fiscal policy. We start with fiscal policy. Fiscal policies primarily influence government spending, taxation, and public sector investments. And unlike monetary policy, which is controlled by central banks and focuses on interest rate and money supply, fiscal policies and directly, affects aggregate demand and can have, a more immediate impact in the stock markets. When it comes to fiscal policy, it's all about, how the government spends money. All right. And when it comes to monetary policy, it has to do with the activities of the central bank as it relates to how it controls money supply, in the economy. Let's look at a monetary policy, synergy. So in this regards, we want to talk about, what monetary policy is all about. Often fiscal policy works in tandem with monetary policy. For example, when the government increases spending, central banks may lower interest rates to make borrowing cheaper. The lower the interest rate, the cheaper borrowing becomes, the more people will tend to borrow. And the more they borrow, the more they have, the more they borrow at a cheaper rate, the more they have kind of disposable income to spend. And the more they spend, discover that corporation will do very well, will record enhanced earning and profitability, and stock price will then go up. That is how it works. This synergy can boost investor confidence, driving market trends upward. The synergy between government expenditure and central bank policies, giving out funds at a lower interest rate. These policies combined will then drive consumer sentiment, confidence, and boost spending. And in an atmosphere of enhanced spending, you discover that companies will then tend to benefit tremendously. Number 4 is long-term effects of government spending. What precisely, are the long-term effects of government spending? Number 1 is debt and inflation. Debt and inflation. So over time, excessive government spending, especially when financed through borrowing, can lead to inflationary pressure because of the huge amounts of money in circulation. So if inflation rises too much, central banks may increase interest rates to control it, which could negatively impact stock prices, especially for high growth stocks. Additionally, there's this particular concern about long-term debt, sustainability. It can, it can has that it has that impact, that effect, that influence of reducing consumer or investor confidence, and it will certainly affect market performance. Discover that by the time the central bank increases rates with the aim of controlling inflation, then with that rate increase, people are going to borrow less, and with that lessen borrowing activities, you discover that they will no longer have enough disposable income to spend, and that reduction in spending will certainly affect the performance of the markets. We look at number 5 is or rather we look at another item under number 4, which is structural changes. Apart from debt and inflation, we want to see how structural changes equally impact the markets. So government spending on infrastructure, education, or technology can lead to long-term economic growth, providing a foundation for sustained stock market trends. And so investment in future sectors, like green energy or innovation can drive sectoral growth and leads to the emergence of new market leaders. By the time government spend and the expenditure is like focused in a particular sector, that sector will experience growth, and discover that a company in that sector will equally experience, heightened stock prices. We look at number 5, investor expectations and market sentiments. You're considering, investor expectation and it will have how these two factors, expectation and sentiment, could influence stock prices. So we have that there's that particular confidence boost kind of. You have that particular confidence boost because well-targeted fiscal policies that stimulate job creation, improves infrastructure, or reduces taxes can boost investor confidence. Because usually the markets, although it should be generally influenced by fundamentals, but most of the times it is influenced by sentiments and investor behavior. And so by the time there is that increase, our investor confidence, that will drive stock price in a positive direction. And so investor sentiment often reacts kind of favorably, to clear, well-executed fiscal strategies, especially when they align with expectation of economic growth. By the time government policies, government expenditure, tends to improve economic growth, you discover that as the economy grows, generally, it will have a favorable impact on the stock market. Then you also have market reaction to fiscal policy announcement. How does the market, react to the government's announcing fiscal policy items? You discover that stock markets often react quickly to fiscal policy announcements, especially in times of volatility. The market actually is being controlled by market participants, and as this news of certain government policies coming out, filtering out, you discover that investors will then react almost immediately, and that reaction could be positive or negative on the stock market, depending on the nature of the intervention. So news of government spending, plans or tax reforms can lead to immediate market movements as investors adjust their portfolios based on anticipated economic conditions. For instance, in my country here, you discover that in a case where there is a huge government contract involving a particular company, huge contract, you discover that the market will react almost immediately because the company involved will then do very well, perform very well, when when the execution begins. And so you discover that, this announcement, policies and regulations and laws, from the government will then certainly, affect relevant stocks and will then translate to a larger upward movement in stock prices.